Ready?
Okay, I'm going to hit record. Hi, guys. I am Melissa Davis, and I read the 2017 Library Edition. And this week we were talking about the important developments in technology. So, really, my focus that I found the most interesting was on online identity or digital identity because it basically affects everybody, kids, adults, anybody who uses digital resources. So what's on the horizon for the next 2 to 3 years is just focusing on that. Everywhere you go, whether it be websites or discussions or you're making purchases or you're just doing searches, everything is traceable to you. So that kind of makes sense, if you go on Facebook and you were recently share something and now you have ads for that particular item. And so they kind of described it in the report as data about the data. So the people are searching. Some are ones that you may not even realize that it's gathering about you, like Google searches or going and browsing things. And some you're intentionally, like LinkedIn, Facebook, you are planning to put your information out there, the websites we've created, that kind of thing. But there are a lot of people who are nervous about this because they don't like their information being out there. So, in fact, there was an example of Pew Research that 86% of people have done something to try to cover up their digital footprint. So it could be using fake names on social media or cleaning the different things on their computers, the history, things like that. So the library plays a part in that because of teaching others how to deal with this digital footprint of how are you going to go back about what you're putting out there to do it responsibly. In Australia, the Queensland University of Technology, they focus on helping students to use their social media well. There's a program they have where they can go in and see how their social media compares to others and give tips and tricks on how to do it well. It can be positive with like faculty who have research or their scholarly work that they want others to see. And so it also provides them a way to kind of connect that with people, what they want them to see. So the digital footprint can be positive or negative. It's just knowing how to use it, and the library can be a big help with that. So that's kind of what I learned and I found was the most interesting.
Wow, excellent.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Okay, so I'm Jennifer Harrell. I read the 2015 K through 12 edition, and I also focused on the important developments in education in 2015. It was very interesting to look at, and now it's 2019, so look at 4 years ago, some of the developments that were talked about 4 years ago versus what we're seeing today. And some of those things were a couple of years off. Like bring your own device was something that was really popular 4 years ago. Maker spaces were starting to be introduced 4 years ago. 3D printing and adaptive learning technology. And I know like 3D printing, for example, is something like, oh, for Christmas, 3 months ago, some of my friends were like, I got a 3D printer. And just like the thought that like now, 4 years later, that's something that's actually being implemented. But the idea has been around for several years. We've talked a lot about maker spaces, so I'm not going to hit on that. The bring your own device I thought was interesting just because it's referring to people using their own personal devices in schools or in their workplace for the benefit of the company. And then you have issues with like Mac versus PC and things like that. So I know just in schools in general, the districts have been more likely to provide devices for students and teachers just to make sure everything is kind of on the same level playing field, just to kind of keep things the same. And then the one that I wanted to focus on was the adaptive learning technology. And this just talks about the idea to reference software or online platforms that adjust to the individual student's needs. This one's interesting because our district just implemented a program called Dreambox within the last few years. They started K2 and now they've increased it all the way through 5th grade. It's an individualized program that students can go on, and it'll adjust for the students. You put them on a 4th grade level, that's what I teach. and it'll adjust the lesson whether they're progressing through it well. It'll give them, maybe move them into that 5th grade level, or it'll back them up into that 3rd grade, whatever they need, which is amazing. And I know this is kind of a hot topic for teachers because we feel like it's replacing us. But something I talked about in just my reflection paper was that the teacher still has a place in the classroom. Like, we are still giving that first line of instruction to students. These programs are great to reinforce what we're already doing in the classroom. It's going to be able to differentiate for students a lot faster than we are, but it doesn't replace the teacher and that firsthand, pulling out those manipulatives and, building those things with the base 10 blocks and all those things we do in the classroom. This program can't take that place, but it is a tool for teachers to reinforce what we're already doing in the classroom. So looking at it more of a tool and not really replacing us, because I know that's like the big red flag for teachers is, well, they're just implementing these programs that are replacing us. It's not that it's replacing us, it's that it's reinforcing what we're already doing. So that was the one that I focused on and talked to a lot about.
Yeah, my son actually has a program like that he does, and it's something that they can do at home, and it's, you can hear it a different way, that it's not just your teacher saying the same thing over and over again. Now you hear it from another place.
Right.
And so I think that using it in that way is a smart way.
Yep.
Definitely.
Great job. Thank you. Yeah, I noticed something, and we also use something for math that is totally adaptive, and it builds up lessons and games for the students that they can also access anywhere nowadays with the bring your own device, and at home they also have access. So yeah, those
That's
technologies are already here.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I'm Nancy, and I read the 2017 Higher Education, and I focused on the key trends accelerating technology adoption in higher education. It was broken down into 3 different categories, which was the long term, which is what is going to be here for the next 5 years and plus. The midterm, that will likely continue to be a factor within the next 3 to 5 years, and then the short terms will be for that will remain important for the next about 1 to 2 years. And I decided to focus on the long term on the long term key trend, which is I chose it because I noticed that the last report that I read also talked about incorporating real world connections to students. So which means having university students have do internships, project-based learning, and use online tools to help them with those projects, such as it said students from the University of South Carolina used group wikis, and they used social media to create projects together and work together. Another thing that I saw that was that they used is like online logs. They and they to supplement their learning, kind of like what Jennifer said. It is not there to replace anything, but to help the learner and to help the learning and the process of learning. So that was my important detail that I got from my report.
Excellent job. All right, my name is Jose Bermudez, and I read the 2017 K through 12 edition, and I'm focusing on the developments mentioned in that report. They mentioned maker spaces, robotics, analytics technologies, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things. That last one I didn't know, but I'm going to touch a little bit on it at the end, which is really not related to learning per se, but they use it a lot in education. So obviously we have touched on maker spaces and how they're so hands-on exploration, play, and so those are in order to build that role of creators in our kiddos. The robotics, as Jennifer was mentioning, it doesn't tend to, it's not intended to replace teachers, because that's the first thing that comes to mind. Oh, it's a robot, it's going to replace us. It's quite the opposite. It's just to enhance the learning experience of the students and to prepare them, to the future of the workforce. And analytics technologies also touch bases on the notion of big data. Right now, we're all over the place about big data, and how Melissa was, saying that libraries nowadays gather information and hub that information for students to access it, and how we can use it to target students that are at risk, and how can we design interventions for them. Virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and also the Internet of Things, they mention a lot of enhancements in technology to provide the students with virtual experiments, and it's mostly to create motivation and collaboration among them. But it's not in any way to replace the teachers. It's just to enhance the the development of their skills in order to prepare them for the workforce. The interesting about the Internet of Things, which is a funny name if you just think of it, is just how right now the agencies and management systems gather data from multiple sources, and they just use it to determine patterns. So that's it. That's what it is. And I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, but it's not. Well, at least in my view. It's just gathering data to find patterns, and the way they use it in schools is to determine where the kids are moving and how they're doing and what they eat. So it's just for health and safety purposes, not for learning. So I didn't focus on that. So in summary, I can say that all of these developments, not only what Jennifer and Nancy were mentioning, but Melissa, I think all of them are focusing on getting early access to the students to technology, to promote higher order thinking skills, and to enrich activities in the classroom, to promote exploration and hands-on, to prepare them for the 21st century workforce. So that's my conclusion.
Yeah, and it's funny, you talked about, the artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things. Mine actually talked about that as well in other sections. And, the artificial intelligence, I hadn't heard a whole lot about. But one thing it talked about, you were talking about how it's there to enhance it, in libraries, and which I thought was interesting. It gave an example of the AI's agents can answer all the technical questions at the library, so the librarians have more time to focus on teaching and research and all the stuff that they really need to focus on, so they don't have to worry about all those little questions that they're answering all the time. So it makes sense that those kind of things would be helpful to enhance the learning.
And this one mentions that we are all exposed to it right now, like Cortana, Alexa, Siri, all those, like Google, all of them are just right now getting exposure to our kids about those technologies. And so we're mentioning only the way to implement it in the classroom to enhance the learning experience. So I think it's just about exposure, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and I think we just have to keep up with the times, honestly. Like the amount that our kids are exposed to video games and YouTube and just the way things are these days, paper and pencil is not gonna cut it anymore in the classroom. And so I think educators just have to be willing to be available and adapt, because our culture is adapting, so we have to be willing to adapt as well.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add on that everything that all of you guys said, it's something that I also read from my article, that the biggest thing with the technology coming in and all of these things that the kids are exposed to, also collaboration has to do a lot with it. Libraries are giving that room to students and universities, even in schools, to work together. It's more like of a collaboration place to go to, instead of just everybody goes there to study on their own individually. So that's something that I feel like it connects to everyone in the technology.
All right. Thank you, ladies. I think this was a very, very great one.
It
Good.
was. Thank you guys too.
Thank you.